To another story now with regards to a Conservative think tank that suggested that people that have recently been made redundant should get up to 80% of their salary. Bright Blue has said that the state should pay more in benefits to those laid off work who are looking for work by introducing a Euro-style insurance scheme. Now, it is a new idea which could help to drive Britain's economically inactive back to work. But would it work? Would it actually work in practice? Communications manager at Bright Blue, Max Anderson, joins me now in the studio. Max, OK, so detail this plan to me, because I've always thought that it's quite unfair that if you're suddenly put out of work, it's difficult to get benefits.
Well, that's completely true. And actually, when you look at it, it's such a steep curve that when you find yourself unemployed, you can go to the basic level of universal credit. For a number of people, especially middle-income households, that's quite a big change. So the way this scheme would work is it's quite simple. Is you get the choice, if you pay national insurance, you get the choice to opt into this scheme. And if you decide to opt in for a certain period of time, when you find yourself unemployed, for whatever reason, if you're having to step out of the job market, you're given for a short period of time when you find yourself unemployed, receiving a slightly higher level of support. It's kind of a bit similar to the furlough scheme, but the difference is you would only receive that support if you have paid in and contributed during your time when you're employed.
Because it seems unfair that if you've been contributing all this time, then suddenly you find yourself out of work, and if you're not made redundant, you can't immediately access the benefits. Isn't that correct? So you have to then go through some other process that could take weeks to get the money, and then you don't get very much.
Yeah, so, I mean, we also want to try and improve the accessibility. So this is like, as you say, it's fairness is the one side. We want to try and be fairer to people. And that's literally the whole point of the chapter, is fairness, and the public would agree that's the right, fair way to do it.
Yeah.
But the other side as well is we also want to improve accessibility, because, as you say, it can sometimes be very hard. And this is where we also recommend introducing a social security digital platform or welfare system, if depending which terminology you prefer to use. And that should also help make it easier and highlight where you can find support. So when you find yourself unemployed, you're not only it's not even easier to find where that support is, but it's also a little bit more than it currently is.
But then what if you've paid into this, you never actually ever take it out? What does it accrue? What happens?
Well, we've kind of come up with a few ideas, but we've kept it very, very broad in the suggestions, not as finite as in other areas. One possible area that the government could explore, that when you retire, if you've been doing it all this time, maybe in retirement you see a little bit of it come back. But at the moment, we've kept that fairly open. Maybe further down the line, we'll look more into that. But for the moment, we think this is a great idea to ensure that people, when they are unemployed, get a little bit more support, but it also helps them get back into employment. We find when people in countries where the curve is really, really steep, they find it much harder to get back into employment, or they're being forced into sectors that might not be right for them, and that's not something we want to see. We want people to go into the right jobs where they can be the most productive, help this country drive forward. That's where we want them to
But it couldn't be sort of interminable, like it couldn't be just carrying on and on, you get 80%. How long would you get it for? And how much would you have had to put in before you would get that money?
So again, we try to keep it a little bit open on this. This is for the government to decide when it's right. It's just the contributory scheme we want to be introduced. It wouldn't be forever. That's the first thing. It would be a short period of time. So it could be 3 months, 6 months, but it would just be for that short time. It can't continue forever, of course. Government's pockets are not never ending. So that's where we'd recommend it. Just be a short period of time.
Well, okay, so let's just throw something into your scenario. So what if I have been working for about 3 months somewhere? I've paid in this special contribution. I suddenly lose my job. Do I still qualify, and would I still get the money? Or would I only get what I put in?
You probably get, well, again, this is how the government... There is a number of ways that this could be done. It could be done that, depending how much you contributed, you will then see more support. That's one way to do it. Maybe that there's literally just a set level that everyone can opt in the same, and then they'll get the same out. There's also possibility that you have to contribute for 3 years or be part of the employment system before then you can opt in. There's a number of scenarios that this could be played out, but obviously, we understand that there's concern around there. We don't want people taking advantage of it, for example, only being in for a week, contributing 1 week, and then seeing that level of support offered. So there are possible ways to mitigate for those problems. But at the end of the day, this is a really fantastic opportunity to help so many people, especially middle-income households. They'll be really well protected by this, and help support them and make sure when they're unemployed, they're helped.
Do you think the government will actually look at this? I mean, Is it something that they might do? I mean, you're a Conservative think tank. Have they asked you to do this, and is it something that they might?
Yeah, well, we're always talking with government and always giving them ideas. They've in the past adopted a huge amount of our policies, and to be honest, it seems.
Could you give us one of the ones that they've had of yours?
Oh God, you're really testing me
You
now.
said a huge amount, so this must be bringing out of your head.
Well, for example, the net zero agenda is one of ours.
Oh God, you want to admit that? You've actually got to admit. Get out! Seriously.
Yeah, that was one of ours.
That's
back
one
in
of yours.
2015.
You're guilty of that.
We are unfortunately guilty of that.
Do you think that was a good one? Do you still?
I still think it's a good way to go. But obviously, I know there are people who have mixed feelings on it. But that was certainly one of ours back in the day.
I think it's almost everyone else. This is Max Anderson. Thank you very much for talking to me and confessing that you came up with net zero. He's the communications manager of Bright Blue.